Gentlemen, children of all ages, it's Wake Up Mintzy, not live from the Barstool Sports office on this glorious Thursday morning. We're getting ready. Week one of college football finally here. We've been talking about it for months. And as always, Wake Up Mintzy presented by the fine folks of Dude Wipes. I don't know how you survive in the summer without Dude Wipes. Keeps everything clean. They've got their pumpkin spice coming out on September 1st. Fall pumpkin spice Dude Wipes, it's just only in America. Find them at Amazon, Target, Walmart, nationwide, all over the World Wide Web. They're taking over the toilet paper world. It's a revolution. We've got my old coworker, I would say kind of boss, I guess, from ESPN Baton Rouge, Matt Moscona, the host of After Further Review, joining us this morning. He's headed to Vegas for LSU, USC, and fired up to have Matt. What's up, Matt? How are you?
Mintzy, I'm doing awesome, man. Co-sign on Dude Wipes. They're a lifesaver.
Yeah, they really are, especially, I'm sure, in that South Louisiana hot summer. Well, we're going to talk a bunch of football with Matt. We're going to get into LSU, USC, and SEC. But before that, Moody, we had an all-time Mintzy moment last night. First ballot. I feel like I've gotten into some really weird, strange situations in my life. But this video I'm about to share, accidentally breaking my sobriety after 4.5 years at a Bible study, has to rank near the top. So we're going to show this video and talk about it. We got Mintzy story time here. This one, the first ballot Hall of Fame all-timer. This could only happen to me. So, I'm at a Wednesday night dinner and Bible study with my good friend, the Lancasters in Wrigleyville in Chicago that I go to sometimes. Great time, ate some crustless pizza, whatever. So, as he's up preaching the message, I'm drinking my Spindrift, just chilling. Whatever. Having a good time, he's talking about Adam and Eve and the fall man, all regular things. So I noticed I start feeling like a little weird toward the end of it. And I look down, and this is a Spindrift, and it's spiked with alcohol. And I haven't had a sip of alcohol since April 27th of 2020. 4.5 year run. And so I got toward the end of it and didn't know it was alcohol and immediately put it down when it was. Kind of have a buzz at a Bible study now. I don't really feel guilty about it because it was an accident, and I'm gonna go back to no viz tomorrow. It's what it's not. I don't think it's a shameful thing. It's a total accident. How does that happen? Like I'm gonna accidentally catch a buzz somewhere, and it's at a Bible study. It'll take me a minute to get over this one, but all good. I'm not falling off the wagon. Honest mistake. Get it done. All right, we got some stuff to get into here because first of all, I want to just go ahead and say it. I'm fine. It was an accidental thing. That's why I wouldn't have made content out of it if I was actually worried about it. It was just a total accident. No worries. It's not going to trigger anything. All right, so having said that, Matt, how does this happen at a Bible study? Like the irony here.
Yes, the irony is incredible. But also, first of all, the line about learning about Adam and Eve, the fall of man, is the thing that actually sent me over the edge, just the detail of that. But Mintzy, you have been a public figure for long enough, and I've known you a long time. Do people think this is a bit?
I don't think so. I don't know. I don't think so. I don't know. I've been pretty open about the no booze for a while. So people,
not the booze, the you, like the you thing.
Some people do. Some people do, but the thing with
4.5 freaking years, man, 4.5 years, not a drop of alcohol, which is so admirable. You just freaking changed your life, your body, your health, your mindset, everything. Like, and you're at a freaking Bible study. You're drinking a spiked seltzer. Why? Let me know what you're doing there, man.
Well,
I love you, but that's what makes you so endearing, because that is like innately and organically you.
Well, okay. So first of all, I didn't even know Spindrift made spiked seltzers. I know Topo Chico does, because we've got this whole seltzer revolution going on. Obviously, Dave and High Noon leading the charge here. Of course, shout out High Noon if you're going to drink seltzers. But I literally didn't even know. So I'm at this thing, and it's this couple that used to run this church I was in New Orleans, and I got connected with them up here when I moved up here. And they have like a Wednesday night thing, and they host people for dinner, and I try to go. And I drink a regular Spindrift sparkling water. The first one's not spiked. And I just grab another one, not even knowing that this is possible. And so he's literally up there like preaching about Eve eating the wrong fruit off the wrong tree in the fall of man. And I drank the whole thing, and I looked down, and I was like, man, I'm feeling kind of good. And then I just see the thing spiked, and I'm like, I mean, the irony of this being about the fall of man and eating the wrong fruit when I drink the wrong sparkling water. I was just like, how can you make this stuff up? How does this happen?
It's poetic and beautiful. But I have another question, Mintzy. So I'm not a Bible study guy. Not that I say it's anything, but like I don't know. I don't regularly attend a Bible study. Is it common to have alcohol, to have booze at a Bible study?
Yeah, I mean, pretty. Okay. You know, these guys are South people. People were drinking wine and they had some seltzers, and yeah, okay. I mean, I don't know. You know, I mean, like you're from South Louisiana. You know, the Catholics are going to booze at this stuff.
I've got $10,000 worth of whiskey behind me. Like I'm a drinker. I love alcohol. I don't know. And you're right. Weddings, whatever. Yes, my mom worked at a Catholic church. She retired after 30 years, and they had plenty of booze at her retirement party. Yes, booze is a thing. But a Wednesday night Bible study, is it non-denominational? Is it Baptist?
No, it's Presbyterian.
Okay. Do Presbyterians drink a lot?
A little bit, apparently. The Baptists don't. I know the Baptists are pretty hardcore.
Maybe that's what threw me a little bit. Maybe it was I was thinking maybe it was like a Baptist Bible study, and you don't want to get that drinking demon on you, Mintzy. That's what I hear about. You want to avoid that.
I'll be fine, dude. I'll be fine. Like I said, like if it was something I was really worried about, I wouldn't have made content out of it. I just think it's all time hilarious to make it 4.5 years and have it happen at a Bible study is just. The iron, and like I said, the fall of man thing. You just can't make this stuff up, man.
Mintzy, okay, but here's a legit question though. So for me, my personality, like the devastating part would be like you had this incredible streak going that ended on something like, again, like it was unintentional, but you broke your streak, man. That's the thing that would like eat at me. Like I do a morning show that I've done for like 6.5 straight years that I've never missed a day. Nights, holidays, weekends, airports, hotels, everywhere. Pre-op. Like before knee surgery, if I missed a day accidentally or something happened, I'd be devastated.
Yeah, I just think the intention matters here, and like all my mistakes that we've all seen, I feel like if there's no intention to it, it's not. I don't know. I know maybe I'm justifying it, but it was accidental, and new day to day. But it was just an absurd. It just right when it happened, I was like, I have to do a video because this is just so unbelievably absurd.
Are you starting a new streak?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We're back on that, dude. Okay. We ain't worried. Okay. Yeah. Like, I could, like, I've never said, like, I'm never saying I would never drink again, but I have way too much still to prove before I would consider it. But I think I would actually be able to have it under control now, but I don't, like, my life's on such a good path. Like, why would I bring it back? So much good's happened to me. Sure. And I get so many DMs and help people that are struggling and stuff, and so it gives my life meaning. So
I believe that, man. That's awesome, dude. Good for you.
Well, Matt, week 1, you're heading to Vegas. We're going to get into it. Matt's the program director and host of After Further Review, 104.5 ESPN at Baton Rouge, where I had a solid 3-month run before I got to Barstool. I was just in and out of there so fast, it was crazy. Just nuts.
We launched you, Mintzy.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. The whole thing still cooks my brain. So y'all are heading to Vegas, LSU USC, Sunday night, Allegiant Stadium. Lot to get into with this game. Fascinating week 1 matchup. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Look, LSU's also asked 4 openers. Lost the Mississippi State COVID game, lost to UCLA, lost to Florida State back-to-back last 2 years. LSU's a 4-point favorite on DraftKings. Over under 64. This is a weird one, man. Playing USC on the West Coast. Miller Moss threw 6 touchdown passes against Louisville in that bowl game. Lincoln Riley offenses are going to score. Can they stop LSU? Probably not. I think this is going to be a pretty freaking wild game, to say the least.
Do you lean over or under in the game, Mintzy? I'm curious. 64.5. Where do you lean?
I lean. Here's my theory on it. I lean over, but if you like over, you got to bet it right now because it's going to go up Sunday because it's the only game on the board, and nobody common bettors are going to bet under here. I mean, I think it could end up at 68 or 69 at kickoff. That's how heavy I think the overaction is going to be on Sunday.
Okay.
But when I look at these teams, and obviously you're more dialed in with LSU than I am, but I do follow it pretty close, and I'm friends with Joe Sloan, the offensive coordinator. Look, obviously, Garrett Nussmeier's going to be good. I mean, he ain't going to be Jaden Daniels. He won the Heisman Trophy. He's one of the best college quarterbacks of all time. But LSU's got an elite offensive line, probably the best in the country. Caleb Jackson's a stud running back. Obviously, losing Neighbors and Thomas ain't great, but LSU's deep at receiver. I'm not worried about that. So I feel good about that. I don't think USC's defense is that good. But on the other side of the ball, and this is my question about LSU, I'll just say, but where are the dudes? You know, I grew up watching these LSU defenses where you got first and second round defensive backs just coming off trees like everywhere. You know, D-line, Marcus Spear, you know, Glenn Dorsey. You just always had factories of D-line and secondary. And I look at this team, and Harold Perkins is one of those dudes. I mean, no doubt about it. But then I see the secondary, and, like, I know P.J. Woodland may end up being good, but he's a 3-star true freshman, may start. And the defensive line's taking Grand Valley State transfers. I don't know. I like the LSU hired Blake Baker, who I really like from Missouri. I love bringing Corey Raymond back from Florida. I like the Bo Davis hire. I think the staff upgrades are great. But it's just weird to me to see LSU not have much talent on defense, and that's my concern.
So this is my thesis on LSU's defense, Mintzy. And Kelly's been really good to us, man. Like I don't think this is common, but he gives us access to practice. I mean, we probably saw a dozen practices in fall camp, and we got to stay hour and a half every time. I mean, we watch team periods, we watch scrimmages, we watch full contact tackle. Like, we got to see a bunch. My theory on this defense is the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. You're right. It's weird. Like, I would say outside of Perkins, there's certainly no All-America candidates. I don't even know that they have first-team All-SEC guys anywhere, Mintzy. But what's so odd is you go watch them do these individual periods, right? So the receivers are going up against the cornerbacks, and the receivers are just dusting them. I mean, so it's just one-man route out in space and just pitch and catch. They go into team periods, man, then all of a sudden, you know, like, you're bringing safety blitzes, and you can give safety help, and you can double-team receivers, and you're getting a pass rush, and the level of difficulty for the offense would increase, and the defense would get stops, and they get turnovers. So I think the thing Blake Baker did, look, man, it's not like what you just said when you had, you know, aliens like Arden Key and Barkevius Mingo coming off the edge just saying, hey, go kill that guy. Or Derek Stingley saying, like, I don't care who your best receiver is, our guy's just going to lock up yours and be better than your guy. I don't think LSU has that, but Blake Baker came in and just simplified everything to eliminate the coverage bust, right? So the 16-yard crosser doesn't become a 60-yard house call, which happened all year last year. Now, that's not going to make you perfect, and there's still going to be teams with good talent that's just going to flat out be better than you, and we'll see how it all manifests starting Sunday night against, as you mentioned, really good offense from Lincoln Riley. But you're right. Like, you know, maybe they got some day 3 draft picks on this team, Mintzy, on that defense. The young guys are coming, like the cavalry is coming because they've recruited well. But the guys you're going to see out there on Sunday, man, I don't know that you have a whole bunch of draft picks on the defensive side outside of Harold Perkins. That's odd to say, but dude, they play better as a unit than they are individually. And I think that's probably what they're going to lean on this year.
Okay, well, my question is, okay, so first of all, the Harold Perkins thing, he's going to come off the edge on third down but play inside on the early downs. I know that's been just a huge point of convention with the LSU fans because everybody's just like, why don't you just put him on the edge?
So Perkins had the great year as a freshman. I mean, he
destroyed Ole Miss, by the way. The second half against Ole Miss was one of the greatest defensive performances I've ever seen. Just
that's when that game. They even asked Kiffin after the game, you know, because Ole Miss couldn't be stopped in the first 3-4 drives of that game. And Lane was asked after the game when it changed. He said when they put 40 on the field. That's what Perkins was wearing 40 as a freshman, and it was obvious. He just changed the game. It's rare that one guy defensively can completely change a game, but it happened in that game. But Perkins had a very productive year a season ago. It was just the defense was so bad. It went for naught. It just went ignored. I mean, he had the same number of TFLs, had more tackles, just about the same number of sacks, had a big pick against Missouri. I mean, he was a really dynamic player. But what you're alluding to, Mintzy, so last year, and this is all on Perkins, man. Perkins wants to be a 3-down linebacker because he wants to be a 3-down linebacker in the NFL. He doesn't just want to be a pass rush specialist. I mean, how many 6'1", 220-pound pass rush specialists are there in the NFL? You know, they don't exist.
No, he is undersized. That is true.
Right.
He's got a little bigger.
So they put on some size this year, but they were going to move him off ball, and they spent all last offseason trying to make him an inside backer. And one game against Florida State, and he's just getting caught up in the wash against those big offensive linemen, and it was like, that don't work. So they moved him to a nickel Sam role. So then this year, to your point about the contention with LSU fans, they're moving him back inside. At least that's the announcement. But Mintzy, I'm telling you, man, we go to every practice. It ain't like they're just lining him up off guards and taking on double teams. I mean, if you watch 3 plays, you'd see Harold Perkins in 3 different positions. I think Blake Baker is a linebacker coach by trade, right? He coaches the linebackers. And, man, we'll see Harold Perkins line up off ball. We'll see him line up on left end. We'll see him drop in coverage. He had a beautiful interception on a sideline route covering Mason Taylor, the great tight end. So I think he's kind of a queen piece on the chessboard, man. I think he can move in any direction and play any position. Almost kind of like, remember how Clemson used Isaiah Simmons a few years back?
He played safety, linebacker, and D end.
Kind of like that. I think, he's not as big as Simmons, but I think he's going to be used kind of like that, where you never really know where he's going to be on the field. I think Perkins is going to have a great year, man. He's in great shape. He's a good mindset, and he's got a coach that knows how to use him. I think Perkins is going to be great. I don't know if the LSU defense is going to be great, but Perkins is going to be great.
All right, so overall, the LSU defense, and look, I know LSU has plenty of NIL money. I mean, LSU's fan support. Nobody's questioning any of it. There's no doubt. I mean, you look at baseball, y'all literally just get whoever you want every year now in that portal. But I don't know. But I was going to say, but what's going on with the football? Like, y'all didn't that was what shocked me so much. Brian Kelly kind of said, "Look, we don't want to spend we think these guys are overvalued in the portal." But right when, because a lot of people thought Mason Smith and Wingo were going to come back on the D line, and both went to the NFL, and you just figured LSU was going to go spend money in the portal, D line and secondary, and they just didn't, and I that's kind of shocked me. I don't know what.
So I don't mind providing some context. So I'll tell you, LSU had $500,000 offers for Mason Smith, Mekhi Wingo. The collective did. Mason, and I have this on the record: Mason Smith, Mekhi Wingo, and Brian Thomas all to return. Now, Brian Thomas obviously was a first round pick.
Yeah, your first rounder. Yeah.
But the other two guys had LSU gotten the deal done with Bo Davis. For those who don't, was the Texas defensive line coach. He played at LSU. They hired him and brought it back. If they had gotten that deal done earlier, I think both Wingo and Smith come back. Okay. But it looked like Bo Davis was going to stay at Texas. And then about a week later, they re-engaged and ended up getting him. But in that interim was when the declaration for the draft deadline came. And so Smith and Wingo both left. So LSU had this 1.5 earmarked, right, for those three players. And they were looking to go add and fortify that defensive front. And they got outbid for Dominic Williams from TCU, who ended up at Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. And they ended up they swung and missed on a guy from Michigan State. There was a little there was a little dirty recruiting in that. He ended up at Miami. And by the way, I'm not casting stones anywhere, Mintzy.
No. The game, it's the Wild West. The game's the game.
I am pro NIL. I am pro portal. Go get who you can get, how you can, whenever you want. I'm happy kids are getting paid. Get your bag if you can. But it was just a thing where LSU missed on the top two guys that they were after, and they ended up landing JVR Suggs from Grand Valley State, who you alluded to. Who, Mintzy, I guess he's a nice player. We saw a guy last year at Florida State in Braden Fisk, who was at Central Michigan, went to Florida State, became an All-American. That happens sometimes when dudes are 23. They're much more developed than they are when they're 18. And Suggs is a strong kid, but right now he's part of a 5 or 6 man rotation at the back of it. He's not a difference making player. So, they had money to spend, man. They just couldn't get people. They just couldn't get people to take the money they were trying to spend on that defensive front.
Well, okay, so when you look at this team this year, like last year you had the number one offense in college football, and honestly, I feel like Jaden won the Heisman, and everybody gives it credit. That was one of the best offenses I've ever seen. I feel like people, because they lost 3 games, everybody remembers that 19 LSU offense because it was literally probably the greatest college football team ever. But that offense last year was right neck and neck with the 19 one. That's how good it was. The defense just allowed over 40 points a ton of times. This year, the offense should still be really good. But, what are you expecting? Top 10, top 20 in the country? I feel like there's got to be, it's going to be really good, but there's still a drop from number 1 to, 10 or 20. And does that seem reasonable to you?
Yeah. So, no, look, LSU last year, they literally led college football in scoring and total offense. And I think time is actually going to be very kind to Jaden Daniels as well, Mintzy. I think the further removed we get from that season, people are going to look back on what Jaden did and go, Christ almighty, that guy was incredible. You're right. There has to be a regression. You're not going to be the number 1 offense in the country again when you lose your Heisman winning quarterback, 2 first-round picks at receiver, your Broyles Award finalist offensive coordinator. But, Mintzy, I just don't worry about the offense, man. I legitimately think this is the most talented offensive line LSU's ever had. They have freak show wide receivers. For context, there's a kid named Shelton Sampson from Baton Rouge. He was a 5-star.
I remember Catholic High. You're right.
There it is, bro. Hey, I wasn't gonna say it, but you can say it.
I don't know how to say it.
He is
How do you say it? I always screw up.
I go Catholic High.
Catholic High.
I do it because the Catholic High people love it, and everybody else here hates it. He's literally like your sixth guy right now, and he's incredible. So they've got guys in the same way that they lost Jarvis and Odell, and it was next with Kayshon Boutte and those guys. In the same way that whenever you lose Jefferson and Chase, here comes Neighbors and Thomas. Like, they got guys. They have guys that'll be freak shows. And Nussmeier, I think, is going to be really good. The one giant question I have is at running back, because you got a great offensive line, but the way you ran the ball last year primarily was with Jaden. He ran for 1,100 yards. Your leading rusher was Logan Diggs, who ran for 600 yards. He tore his ACL in the bowl game. Now he's at Ole Miss. So, you don't have anybody on this team that's had over 100 carries in a season. So it's a gigantic question, not on the offensive line, but who you're going to turn around and give the ball to if they can actually make it go. So that's my bigger question. But I think there's enough talent there, Mintzy, to be a top 20 offense. I'll say it this way. LSU's offense is going to be good enough to win any game they play. I'm not predicting they're going to win every game. I'm saying that offense is good enough to win any game you play. It's just a matter of how much better can that defense be from what was literally statistically the worst defense LSU's ever fielded.
Yeah, so I've seen some futures odds on props. Nussmeier pushes the ball down the field. Like, we saw it. I was at the SEC championship against Georgia when he threw for like almost 400 yards in the second half. He threw for over 400. Threw for over 400 against Wisconsin in that bowl game last year. So he's 11-1 to lead the SEC in passing yards. I think it hypothetically, my thought is, what if he throws for 400 or 450 against USC Sunday night and that game gets wild? He'll be like 3 or 4-1 out of it. So I'm actually taking a look at that, because I know they're going to try to run the ball more and be balanced, but man, his yards per attempt is like insane how much he pushes it down the field. And I'm looking forward. I'm sure I can already see Kelly screaming at him on the sidelines over some turnovers this year because of it. But I think he's going to be pretty good.
One of the things, Brian Kelly's had a pretty even narrative all offseason about Nuss. And what he said is, last year, Nussmeier had 5 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. Like, if you go back to his freshman year, he threw an interception. I'm sorry, this was 2 years ago. He threw a pick 6 against Southern. That is one of the most heinous decisions I've ever seen in college football. Like, literally back to the line, just shoveled it right into a defender's belly, and it was pick 6. And Kelly has said, with Nussmeier in the past, it was like a rental car. It's not your car. You leave trash in it, you'll ding it up. You're just not really worried about it. Now he owns the car. The offense is his car, and he's taking better care of it. That's great to say, man. We'll see if it actually plays out. Look, Garrett checks every box, man. He's 6'2", 200 pounds. He's got the size. He can make every NFL
good
throw.
Pedigree, too, with his dad.
Son of a coach, high football IQ, almost like athletic arrogance. You know what I mean? Like a little Baker Mayfield, when you're good and you're like borderline confident, arrogant, which I love that in a quarterback, by the way. The one thing, man, is the decision making. And Mintzy, I'll give you an example, man. So we got to watch a lot of scrimmage periods, as I mentioned, 2 Saturdays ago. Offense starts at the 30, so they got 70 yards of field ahead of them, right? And it's 11 on 11. And 4 plays, boom, boom, boom. They go to the plus 31. I mean, right down the field. And then they get into a situation where the defense comes on a safety blitz, and Nuss just starts backpedaling and just heaves it toward the sideline. Well, P.J. Woodland, the freshman you referenced, ranges over and picks him off right on the sideline. I mean, there was another series we saw where right down the field, they get into the red zone. They're in a goal-to-go situation. It's like a 3rd down. It's covered. He's patting the football. Instead of throwing it through the back of the end zone or throwing it away, he tries to force one into a tight window over the middle, and it's picked by Ashton Stamps right over the middle. So I don't know that all those bad decisions are purged out of him, Mintzy. I mean, if they aren't, that's devastating for this offense, because they're going to have to protect that defense. But if he has corrected his decision-making, improved his decision-making, then I think they can be a top 10 offense, because they got the talent to do it. But it is like the singular unknown with Garrett Nussmeier. He's played in plenty of games, man. I mean, he's played in, I think, 20 career games, something like that, over 3 years. He's had plenty of playing time. He's started the bowl game. He had played primarily the whole game against Arkansas his freshman year. It's really just a matter of can he protect the football? And if he can, I think they're going to be really good on offense.
Okay. Got a couple more LSU questions that we're going to get around the SEC because Matt's got a really hot take about Alabama I want to get to. All right. So let's hypothetically say the offense falls from 1 to, we'll say 15th. That's still a pretty big fall because you're talking about one of those historical offenses. The defense was 110 last year. I don't know if you can think top 30, top 40, but you think this defense could get to 50th or 60th? I think that's kind of realistic what I think this year.
That's been so for what it's worth. So if you talk to LSU fans that are looking for the glass half full, they'll tell you this. Blake Baker, when he went to Missouri, the same thing happened, Mintzy. He inherited a defense that was 106 nationally, and in year one, they were top 30. Now, Missouri, under Blake Baker, had NFL players on their defense. I mean, last year they had 5 defensive players drafted. That was
that Darius Robinson, first-round defensive lineman.
First-rounder Darius Robinson, yes. That was Ennis Rakestraw. I mean, they had a talented Chris Abrams-Drain. They had a talented NFL defense. You don't have that here. But the way I've said it, Mitzi, is, look, you were literally the worst defense in LSU history last year.
You think they were worse than the Pelini 2020? Were they worse than that?
Statistically, they were.
Because that was bad.
Now, that team only played 10 games, remember, because that was the COVID year. But this team, in the 3 losses, allowed an average of 48 points per game in their 3 losses. Remember Ole Miss? I mean,
if you're Ole Miss, LSU scored 49 points in that game and lost.
They lost 55-49. It's unconscionable. I don't think you have to be top 10 or top 20 or top 30. But if you could be in the 50s, I think a top 15 offense scoring 38 to 40 points a game, which I think is doable, and a top 50 defense allowing 21, 23 points a game, I think that puts you in a position where you're probably a 10-2 team in the back of the playoff. But if the defense doesn't improve as much as a lot of us are hoping they have, then I think you're in a really tough spot where you're probably looking more 9-3, 8-4, and you're probably in the Texas Bowl.
All right, and then last thing on LSU, the prediction for Sunday night, because this line went from 6.5 to 4. I'm sketched out about it. I'm going to be on that over, but I'm trying to place it today because it's already gone up from 63 to 64.5. When I did my LSU prediction blog, I've done all my SEC prediction blogs except for the Vandy one, which is coming out today, and I'm sure it'll be the most read one because everybody cares about Vandy football. I said LSU 9-3 this year. I gave them the benefit of the doubt, but I actually said week 1 loss because I've seen this the last few years where you drop week 1, but then you bounce back. And I actually said Ole Miss's only loss was at Baton Rouge, which I'm going to catch you.
Okay, so I haven't formally given a pick on the game yet, Mintzy, but
that's fine. You don't have to.
No, it's fine. I do lean LSU, but I'll tell you the play I like, Mintzy, is the under.
So you like the other side, okay.
The fact that you think the number's going up tells me I'm probably going to wait on that as well.
I would wait for sure.
And I'll tell you why. Brian Kelly has given us these context clues all offseason, and it finally was hammered home on Tuesday. So Will Campbell, LSU's great left tackle that a lot of people know his name. If you don't, look him on any mock draft, you'll see him. He's right there.
Monroe, 3-1 great. Shout out.
Dude, Mintzy, he's going to be the highest drafted LSU offensive lineman ever. I mean, wow. he's got a chance to be top 10. And just for context, you may know this, Mintzy. Do you know the last time LSU had a first round offensive lineman?
I feel like this is a loaded question by asking. Is it Whitworth?
Whitworth was a second rounder, by the way.
Okay, he was a second rounder. Well, he's my age. So
Alan Faneca.
Faneca, the guard for the Steelers, who was a Hall of Famer.
In 1998. That's the last time LSU produced a first-round draft pick on the offensive line. They're going to have 2 this year. Wow. So quite literally, this is the most talented offensive line LSU's had ever. Will Campbell said this week, in no uncertain terms, he's like, we are going to run the football. I don't care what you do with that. Put it out there. We are going to run the ball. And I really think, Mintzy, that Brian Kelly has kind of dropped these little Easter eggs throughout fall camp talking about that. And I think that's going to be their approach on Sunday, man. I think they are going to run the ball more than they throw it. I think they are going to try to shorten that game. I think just like Georgia Tech at the end of that Florida State game where they lined up and everyone knew it was coming and Florida State couldn't stop it. I think LSU looks and says, that's our best position group on the team. We could shorten the game. We could take our defense from being on the field 75 to 80 plays a game and make it 65 plays a game. And that's automatically going to make you a better defense. So That's why I lean under. I'm with you, Mintzy. I don't think LSU's stopping Lincoln Riley's offense from scoring. I'm not saying this defense is.
No, you're just thinking they shorten the game.
I think the defense is going to get stops. I think you're going to see far less coverage bust. DBs running around with their hands in the air, pointing at each other. Receivers running with no defensive player in the screen. I think you're going to see a lot of that eliminated. It's going to be longer drives for offenses against the LSU defense, and I think LSU shortens the game. That's why I like the under. And I do think LSU wins a close game. And see, I'm leaning something like upper 20s, low 30s, like a 34-31, a 31-30, something along those lines.
Just like slightly under.
Yes, slightly under. That's why if you're thinking the number is going to go up, I'll wait on it and get a better price.
Well, I just think you've got a situation from my gambling experience. It's the only game Sunday. It's going to be the most bet game of the week. It's out in Vegas. You got all that LA money. The common man ain't going to bet the under in this game. You know what I'm saying? Everybody's going to be like, shootout, Vegas. And it's already gone up from 63 to 64.5. I mean, I know it's crazy. I think it could be 68 or 69. And what I suggest doing on DraftKings, of course, we're DK partners, I'm going to take it today at 64, 64.5 and hope it goes to 69 and just go for the middle. Because I think it could really rise. I think it could rise that much. And like you said, you could have a 34-31 final, or you could hit both. I think it's very possible. One other quick observation on college football I've noticed. So the rule changes, clock not stopping on first down now. You saw Georgia Tech. Florida State had 3 possessions second half. I think these rule changes help unders and underdogs because you're not seeing these 4.5-hour games anymore. And you used to see when the clock would stop on first downs, these smaller school teams just run out of gas in the second half and they become track meets. But now that you can run and shorten, and I think actually tonight, to preview this, North Dakota State, Colorado, North Dakota State's going to huddle and run for 5 or 6 yards over and over and over and over again. And how will Colorado deal with it? I kind of like North Dakota State, the points and maybe the under. But I think this is a thing in college football that you'll see some of these teams trying to shorten games more, and it's going to hurt those.
That happened. I mean, look, Mintzy, the rule change with the clock not stopping on first down and when you went out of bounds, that was instituted last year outside 2 minutes. And you saw offensive total plays in games go down by like 3 to 5 plays a game. So I'm with you on that, especially if you think there's something close. I'm interested that thought on North Dakota State, Colorado. I'm sure I'll play something in that game, but so you like the under in that game? I like it. 16. Last year, so the end of the year, I had a thing I figured out where all the Colorado games were flying way under because their offensive line couldn't block. And so the totals were, because their early games were high, the totals were like 59, 60, and they'd be like 23-17 finals. And when I think about tonight, Colorado's got the talent, skill edges, all that. But, man, North Dakota State, Deion's openly complained, like, who schedules this? You get no glory for winning this game. They're well coached. Yeah. They're just a nightmare team to play against. We've seen them beat Kansas State and win D1 games. They're number 2 right now in FCS. So, I don't know. And I think like 90% of the money's on Colorado, too, I saw publicly. So, I'm thinking North Dakota State and under. The money line's plus 310. I've seen crazier things happen than that. So, that was one I was sort of looking at. And then, all right, I want to get to the Alabama thing because obviously I follow AFR. You've been extremely outspoken about the fall of Alabama and have been celebrating it all offseason. Kalen DeBoer, Washington was like top 30 preseason. He got him to the title game. Obviously, he did a great job at Penix. A bunch of talent, receivers, all that. But this is still a huge transition. The defense has to regress. Has to. They hired Kane Womack from South Alabama head coach. I'm sure he's a fine defensive coordinator. I'm not saying anything. There's just no way the defense doesn't regress like a good bit. So how much can DeBoer improve the offense in Milrose, the question? You say they're going to lose 3 or 4 games? I think that do you realize that after Nick Saban's first year in Tuscaloosa, when they were 6-6, and then won the
when they lost to UO Monroe, and he compared it to Pearl Harbor and Monroe, funny story, Bama had to take the bus from Tuscaloosa to Shreveport to play Colorado in the Indy Bowl. So Monroe put a huge billboard up that the Bama team had to pass on I-20 and see. I always thought that was a funny story.
After that, Saban's teams lost 3 games one time. From 2008 to 2023, they lost 3 games one time. It was 2010. They went 9-3, and they lost to LSU, South Carolina, and Cam's Auburn team. Alabama's going to lose 3 games in the regular season this year. Mitzi, you're a Saints guy like I am. And this, I have
not a lot of optimism on that front right now, by the way.
I'm not, but I'm going to tell you, I'm going to give you a comparison here that is a fundamental truth that I learned in football in 2012 with Bountygate. 2011 was the greatest Saints team ever. I know nobody remembers that team outside of New Orleans because they didn't win. But they set an NFL record for offense. They were incredible. They were better than the Super Bowl team.
Yeah, they just all the turnovers in that San Francisco game, man. Still almost won it. Had 5.
They lose the divisional round to San Francisco. In that offseason, Peyton gets hit with Bountygate, and the Saints did everything right. They had everybody back from the 2011 team. Sean Payton, they had the whole offseason to prepare for when he was going away. The Do Your Job banner. They had Aaron Cromer, then Joe Vitt in the interim. Drew Brees was there. You had player leadership. That team went sub 500 and missed the playoffs. In that moment, I knew and would never be convinced otherwise that coaching in football matters more than any other sport. And Nick Saban is the greatest college football coach ever. Better than Bear Bryant, better than anybody else, because nobody ever had to deal with as much fundamental systematic change within college football, from conference championship games to the BCS to a 4-team playoff to NIL to transfer portal, all of it. And nobody ever navigated it as well as Nick Saban did. You cannot tell me you are taking the greatest coach ever away from Alabama. Oh, by the way, they're also losing the greatest safety they've ever had, who was an All-American as a freshman. They're losing their 5th-year senior center. Now, Alabama people are going to tell you he wasn't any good because he muffed up the snap in the Rose Bowl. You lose 42 players, I believe was the final count, off that team a year ago. You cannot turn over half your roster and lose the greatest coach ever and tell me you're not going to miss a beat. By the way, I think Jalen Milroe stinks. I may be dead wrong. Y'all may laugh at me, and that's fine, and you can at the end of the season if he's awesome. But I watched Jalen Milroe play a legitimate defense in Michigan, and dude was incompetent. He threw for like 112 yards. They couldn't complete a pass against Michigan. Put him up against, I don't know, LSU's defense last year, which was atrocious. Yeah, he cut straight through him because he's a great athlete. You put Jalen Milroe, watch what's going to happen when Georgia goes to Tuscaloosa and puts that Alabama offense in a 3-hour stranglehold because Jalen Milroe can't run the ball and he's not good enough to pick apart that defense. Alabama's going to lose 3 games in the regular season this year, and I think Kalen DeBoer is a good coach, Mintzy. I do, and I think he's going to win games. But here's the problem they have in Tuscaloosa. When you win 6 national titles in 12 years, and that's what Nick Saban did from 2009 to 2020, they won 6 national titles in 12 seasons. That becomes your expectation. And man, brother, when all of a sudden you're looking at 9-3s, which by almost anybody else's standard is amazing, at that place with those fans, it's unacceptable. And that's the pressure he's going to face. It's already been 3 years that they haven't won a national championship. They're not winning it this year. And that the longer that number keeps to grow, the further removed they get, the more antsy those fans are going to get, the more they're going to look at Kalen DeBoer. Mintzy, look, you're an Alabama fan. You think it's your birthright to be in a playoff and win a championship. I lived through Mike Shula and Mike DuBose. I lived through Dennis Franchione in Tuscaloosa, Mike Price and Aries Angel. Like, it ain't always been sunshine and roses. They've had the 2 greatest coaches in college football history, 50 years apart, Bear Bryant and Nick Saban. But, brother, you cannot convince me. You cannot convince me. The only thing that would convince me is to see it with my own 2 eyes on the field football Saturdays. You cannot convince me that Alabama just ain't going to miss a beat. They're just going to roll along with Kalen DeBoer and Kane Womack and a bunch of dudes that transferred in and it's just not real. It's just not real. I learned that lesson in 2012. Coaching matters. It always will. And Alabama lost the best one. They're going to lose 3 games this year at least.
Yeah, I have them losing 3. The Georgia game you mentioned at home, and then I have them losing at LSU and at Tennessee were the 3 I'd losing. Because I actually think, there's been so much SEC talk on a broader spectrum. Everybody's talking playoffs, 12 teams. Obviously Georgia, Alabama. We'll mention the Ole Miss thing. You actually said it because me and Matt and I go at it on Ole Miss LSU. We've been doing it for years. But you actually believe in this Ole Miss team and they're going to make the playoff this year, you said. which is the first time I think I've ever heard you say anything nice about Ole Miss, by the way.
You know, you're talking about irony earlier, Mintzy. Like the fact that you got drunk at a Bible study. Like, you know what else is irony? Is that freaking 2003 SEC West Championship banner that Ole Miss hung after Eli fell down and LSU actually went on to win the national championship. What you all hung thinking that it was going to be this great flex of an accomplishment just got you mocked like the runt Ole Miss has been their entire life. Haven't won anything since presidents had long beards. That's Ole Miss. So yes, it actually does pain me a little to say this, but I think Lane Kiffin's a very good coach. I think having experience at quarterback in Jackson Dart is a very big deal. While I think Quinshon Judkins is great, I don't think that that's a deal breaker offensively for Ole Miss. And I don't love. I appreciate the fact that they went and addressed the lines of scrimmage, which Ole Miss has always had.
That's the whole thing with me with it this year. It's like they've schemed up 2 of the last 3 years. They've gone 10-2, just scheming it up. But now you've got getting Walter Nolan from A&M and 4 new transfer offensive linemen, 2 that started for Washington. I don't know. That's my big thing is they finally got the dudes in the trenches.
And I firmly believe, always believe, when I'm making a prediction, I look at 2 things. Who has the fewest amount of questions against the most manageable schedule? I think Ole Miss has the fewest questions, and their schedule should be a relative breeze to 10-2, which would get them in the playoff. I do think, Mintzy, however, that LSU beats Ole Miss in Baton Rouge. And it's not necessarily because I think LSU is so much better than Ole Miss, because I don't know that I believe that this year. I believe when and where you play someone matters. And at that point on the schedule, it's the second of back-to-back road conference games for Ole Miss. They're going at South Carolina, then at LSU. LSU gets a bye before they play Ole Miss. So LSU will be healthy, rested, 2 weeks to scheme for that game, while Ole Miss is second of a back-to-back. And you better believe that's a night game in Tiger Stadium. It's going to be 2 top 10 teams. If both cooperate, right?
By the way, I didn't realize this, Matt. 100th year of Ole Miss LSU this year too.
That's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, 100th year, Saturday night, Death Valley. I'll obviously be there. I've been talking to our mutual friend and boss, Gordy Rush, already. I'm going to come down and do a bunch of – I think we got some events planned for Friday, and it's going to be a really big weekend.
Hey, Mintzy, even when LSU wins that game, y'all can keep the stupid Magnolia Bowl trophy. Nobody wants that thing anyway.
I can't wait for that game, man. I've always said this. It's like just the Ole Miss side of me. When Ole Miss LSU really matters is my favorite ever. I mean, I was so glad when the SEC switched the traditional opponents. I was like, if they take LSU Ole Miss away from me, I'm like literally not going to be able to function. This is going to be my.
Is that a consensus feeling with Ole Miss fans? The reason I asked, Mintzy, is because like, if you ask an LSU fan what's the biggest game on the schedule, it really just depends. You ask 10 LSU fans, you can get 10 different answers, literally.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was Bama while Saban was there because of how big the stakes were, I'm sure.
But even still, Mintzy, like at a time when Saban was there, LSU Florida was massive because 6, 7, and 8 they kept flip flopping national championships, and that was the big game on the schedule for me.
The LSU Auburn's always been big too.
Me, it's Auburn, and then all those games in the '90s and early 2000s, it's LSU Auburn for me. So, you ask my grandfather, he'll probably tell you Ole Miss from watching Johnny Vaught and all that's Billy Cannon's run and everything. Like it really varies. So, like, do you think that that's a commonly shared thing with Ole Miss fans about LSU?
Oh, I'm telling you right now that the LSU game for Ole Miss fans is so big. Like the Egg Bowl's the in-state thing, but I'm telling you, Ole Miss fans turn up for LSU more than I'm like it. It's like Super Bowl level, that Ole Miss LSU on the Ole Miss side of it. It's like State and LSU are the 2 biggest, and it's like a funny thing in the Egg Bowl because the State hates Ole Miss so much, and Ole Miss dislikes State. I'm not saying that, but I feel like there's a big portion of the Ole Miss fan base that gets up a bit more for LSU than State. And it's also because Ole Miss is 50% out of state now, and so I think the Mississippi people, the Egg Bowl means more, but like so many people are coming from all over now that I think that's part of it too.
You know what? That's interesting, Mitzi. I mean, I may lose people with this because I don't know that everybody outside of the 2 fan bases care. The difference is, like, so Arkansas, for example, for years, LSU Arkansas was that Friday after Thanksgiving thing, right? The 1:30 Friday CBS game. And LSU fans resented the hell out of that. They hated the game. They hated the stupid boot trophy. They hated the 1:30 kickoff, having to get up after Thanksgiving and play a Friday game. But Arkansas came into the league not having any natural rival. And so Arkansas sort of affixed itself to LSU. It's almost like if you're the popular kid at school and then there's a new kid who comes in and then the principal says, hey, walk him around for the first day. So LSU's like, man, we've been around for 75 years and we get stuck with the new kid. What's up with this? And they always resented that game, but Arkansas thought it was their Super Bowl. So Arkansas fans got super high for that always. The team, everybody, and LSU was usually flat against Arkansas. Still is, quite honestly. But at least they moved it off that Friday after Thanksgiving. That's why it's interesting to hear you say that about Ole Miss, because I don't think LSU fans resent the Ole Miss, have the resentment the way they do against Arkansas, but I still don't think they look at Ole Miss as like the game that they get up for like that.
Well, I think the thing was I have so many memories of like crappy Ole Miss teams. Like some of the greatest games I've ever been to in college football were when Ole Miss is a 20-something point underdog in Baton Rouge. And I remember the Odell Beckham circling the field, the punt return in 2013. I remember the 2012 game where Dante Moncrief like dusted the secondary. Like LSU ended up coming back and winning both in like thrillers. And then I remember even Ole Miss forced overtime with Brent Schaefer down there. Like, and then even Nick Saban's last game when Robert Lane lost 27-24 and Ali Broussard ran for 250 yards. Like all these games have been the same narrative where LSU's like a 20-something point favorite, and then you get the Ole Miss Super Bowl effort. And so I feel like that I have a lot of memories of that in the series. Like you've just seen that for years. And now when Ole Miss is actually good, like I saw it 2 years ago. I mean, LSU wiped Ole Miss out in that second half with Perkins. But like now LSU, it's like, matters to them. And then especially off last year when they blew that 49-40 lead with 5 minutes left. I think, as you said, the Saturday night off the bye, you're going to get some efforts. A couple other SEC questions. What do you think of Tennessee this year? I feel like people aren't talking about them, and I like Nico, and I think they're going to be good.
I think Tennessee, I think there are 5 teams. So I think Georgia, Texas, I think are playoff teams. I think there's 5 teams after that have a legitimate playoff shot. And it's, alphabetically Alabama, LSU, Missouri, Ole Miss, Tennessee.
Okay.
Same thing I mentioned, Mintzy. Look at Tennessee's schedule. I mean, everything schedule-wise works out for Tennessee to where they could be a 10-2 team. What I think happens, there's a lot of, and by the way, I think Tennessee finally, being at SEC Media Days this year, Mintzy, the narrative around Tennessee is that they finally have depth on defense. And if
James Pierce Jr. may be the best D lineman in America.
Look, you see a lot of mock drafts where he's projected the number 1 pick in the draft, right? Mm-hmm. So, but it's not just Pierce. They feel like they have depth at all 3 levels on defense. And if they do to complement Heupel's offense, then that thing can go, because we saw when that is humming what it could look like with Hooker a few years ago. You're right. Nico's the big question. Can he make that offense go? They
looked really good against Iowa, though. I thought that was a test.
Yeah.
Iowa's a good defense. Yeah. I mean, that's not a joke. That wasn't a joke.
Yeah. If he's ready for 12 games and to lead him, I think he could absolutely be there. But Mintzy, what I think is going to happen is you're going to have a handful of teams that slot in right at 10-2, and it's going to come down to this weird tiebreaker series. And if it's head-to-head matchups, and because you don't have divisions anymore, you get 6 or 7 odd tiebreakers, it might come down to something like if the 3 teams at 10-2 didn't all play each other, then it's like your common opponent's win-loss percentage. And I think we're going to see something like that in the SEC standings, and I'll be very curious to see what the committee does with that. Like, do they honor the league standings, or do they do whatever they want to do?
Yeah, well, that's interesting you bring that up, because I feel the same way, because Georgia's 24-0 the last 3 years in the SEC regular season, but they got road trips to Bama, Texas, and Ole Miss this year. And in my Georgia preview, I said 10-2. I said they beat Bama. I have them losing to Texas and Ole Miss. And if that happens, like we could have literally you could see like Georgia 10-2, Ole Miss 10-2, Tennessee 10-2, Texas 10-2, LSU right in that mix. It could be just completely wild. I think that's very important.
So you have Georgia Ole Miss in the SEC championship.
Yeah, I said Georgia got revenge on Ole Miss in the SEC championship. I had Ole Miss winning in Oxford, and then Georgia winning the rematch. Is what I said. Okay. I have Ole Miss. I went Homer, but I have Ole Miss 11-1. But their only loss I said at LSU was my.
So I think Ole Miss. So I think Ole Miss is 10-2. I think they lose to Georgia, LSU, but they get in the playoff and probably host a first round game in the playoff. I think Georgia and Texas are. I think Georgia and Texas end up playing at least twice, if not 3 times, depending on how the playoff plays out. I think Georgia and Texas.
The Texas thing I want to touch on. Okay, I think Quinn Ewers could have a huge year. I know he was banged up last year. I know they spend the money, and Sark knows the SEC, but they lost freaking Jonathan Brooks, Xavier Worthy, A.D. Mitchell, an NFL tight end in Sanders. I mean, they lost a ton. I know they went to the portal
and
hard.
CJ Baxter injured now.
Yeah, see, I'm just saying, and they lost the first Sweat and Murphy up front, who were first and second round picks, and their front seven was great against the run. Their secondary was questionable last year. I mean, I know they spend the money, but my God, they lost a lot. I do think they have a pretty favorable schedule. You know, a lot.
If you look at the schedule.
Well, yeah, the Oklahoma game being a road game for them is so big. So they've got 3 SEC road games, and one of them's Vandy. So they go to Arkansas in November. I think Bobby Petrino takes over October 6th after they lose to Tennessee before the LSU.
Okay.
They got a bye.
Okay.
There's a bye before they play LSU. I predict Arkansas's 2-4 and Petrino takes over. And then the other Texas road games, they got to go to A&M Thanksgiving night, which obviously is going to be tough. But you're right. No, I thought their schedule was pretty favorable. They're at Michigan week 2, but man, I think
Vanderbilt's the other one, by the way.
Yeah, I think Michigan's kind of in a weird situation. So
Mintzy, it's almost as if someone in the league office went to Texas and said, "Here, you make your schedule." I mean, Oklahoma is the antithesis of that. Oklahoma,
their schedule is murder.
Like, I could see Oklahoma going 7-5, being an Oklahoma team that, if they were still in the Big 12, could be a 10-11 win team, but could be 7-5 against the schedule they were dealt in the first year in the SEC. It's brutal. I don't think that it was the league saying, we're going to do Texas a favor because they're Texas. I just think we're talking about Ole Miss's schedule. We're talking about Missouri's schedule, Tennessee's schedule. Like, it's just a new scheduling model, and some people were going to be the beneficiary on the front end. And Texas is a huge beneficiary of it. Why I think they are in the SEC championship game against Georgia.
And then you mentioned the Oklahoma thing. So their schedule, for those who haven't followed, you got Josh Heupel coming back to Oklahoma, who won the national championship. Yeah. That's a huge game. That's the 4th week of the year. They get Bama at home. You have road game. You play you have Texas in a home game. That's a neutral site. At Missouri, at Auburn, at Ole Miss, at LSU. I mean, I've got Oklahoma 6-6 because their offensive line's going to be really young this year. That's what concerns me with Jackson Arnold, because you and I both know the biggest difference with the SEC is the D lines, and if they've got a young, inexperienced, shaky O line, and then a quarterback who's a 5-star but still young, I don't know. I think things could get away from them a little bit.
One more thing on Jackson Arnold. I think Oklahoma, this is a tremendous amount of hubris and a really risky decision they made in sending Dylan Gabriel off. Because make no mistake, they sent Dylan Gabriel off, which is why he's at Oregon right now, because they wanted to play Jackson Arnold. They've got the 5-star that they wanted to get on the field. And Mintzy, maybe this is just my experience in covering LSU, but look at Zach Mettenberger. Started in 2012. Was okay. By the end of 2012, was really good. 2013 had a monster year. Threw for 3,000 yards. Had Beckham and Landry. They were awesome. Look at Joe Burrow. 2018. Do you realize in 2018, Joe Burrow went the entire month of October without throwing a touchdown pass?
Yeah, I think he had like 16 touchdowns that year or something.
Bro, like, it took a minute, but then in 2019, he hit. Second year as a starter. Look at Jaden Daniels. 2022. Was a good player, functioned within the offense, won 9 games, beat Alabama. 2023, Heisman. I think Oklahoma made a foolish decision in sending Dylan Gabriel packing to start the young guy, especially against that schedule in the first year of the SEC, because Dylan Gabriel is going to go to Oregon, and right now is the odds-on favorite to win the Heisman. He's going to have a great season at Oregon. And I think Oklahoma is going to struggle mightily, and you might wreck a young quarterback with something like that against that schedule, playing him too early. I think that was a foolish decision by Oklahoma. They can be all jacked up they want about Jackson Arnold. He may in time be great, but boy, they're going to take lumps this year, big time.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be rough because, like, I know their defense, Venables is a defensive guy, but their defense still finished in the 50s last year. They have a lot of guys back, but, like, they have a lot of – I don't know. I have a lot of questions. More questions than answers about Oklahoma. You said SEC championship games, Georgia, Texas. That's your pick?
Yeah, I got Georgia winning it. I know it's chalk, but Mintzy, I fall right now with Georgia the way I fell with Bama for so many years. Mm-hmm. Like,
it's just the program's so good, yeah.
You default to them because they've deserved the benefit of the doubt. And Georgia right now deserves the benefit of the doubt until someone proves that they can run with them, and nobody has right now.
That's fair. Well, Matt, also AFR, you're the program director at ESPN Baton Rouge. AFR, I mean, what, this year 16? Something like that?
I'll hit February will be 15. So
gonna have a big run, that's an unbelievable run. He's been the 3 to 6 drive time in South Louisiana, and you're syndicated all over too. I believe we're Shreveport, Nola, Baton Rouge.
Baton Rouge, New Orleans, Alexandria, Lafayette, Lake Charles. So we actually need to get into Shreveport, Mintzy.
Okay.
I mean, or Monroe. Like, can you make a call for your boy here? Like,
I know.
What are we doing up there?
Well, we can. I can see what I can do. You know, I'm down.
Let's
I'm
go,
down.
man.
I'm down. Look. I'll say this. I say this to Matt all the time. I'm gonna say this on air on Barstool. I love my relationship with y'all. It's been a huge thing for me since I started going on OTB in 2017. I know for a fact I wouldn't be here without ESPN Baton Rouge and all his relationships. And, I just think the world of everybody there in that company and Guarantee Media. So I just, it's so much fun to keep that relationship going for sure.
Mintzy, you're great, man. I know. I tell you all the time, dude. Your energy is infectious. You're as genuinely good a human as I know, and so I love your success, man. I'm fired up for you, and I want only good things for you in the future, man. So congrats on everything.
Hell yeah! Last thing. So tomorrow, my Friday plans. I'm going to Appleton, Wisconsin.
Okay.
The Wisconsin Timber Rattlers of High A have been wanting me to come up all year. They're coming and picking me up in Chicago. I'm hanging out with the team. Everybody else in the Barstool office throws the first pitch. So I'm throwing the first pitch. I'm shooting off bazooka cannons. I don't know. So I'm going to Appleton, Wisconsin, and I'll be back here Saturday for the stream. So I better get my
from the Garden District in Baton Rouge, watching a Ole Miss Kentucky game, to shooting off bazooka cannons in Appleton, Wisconsin. What a hell of a run, man!
Dude, it's been a run. It has been a run. Oh, that's a wild one. And then just ready to fire some football this weekend. But anyway, well, awesome, Matt. Well, thank you so much for joining us, man. Follow Matt on Twitter at Matt Moscona. 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Like I said, one of the best radio stations in the South. They've been doing it forever. And the amount of respect I have for y'all. Y'all know it. I don't even have to say it. So thanks for joining us this morning. Thanks to Dude Wipes as always. Love talking SEC football. Feeling not too hungover, so we're good. Moody is always holding down the fort. Check out the new Fantasy Football Factory podcast presented by DraftKings. It's out now. Wide receiver and tight end preview. If anybody needs a last-minute cameo for your fantasy draft order, hit me up. And, boys, we got college football tonight. I'm on North Dakota State plus 10, the under 60.5. And I also didn't mention this, Minnesota, 2-point home dog. Book it. Those are my picks on DraftKings. DK partner. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks for joining us on Wake Up Mintzy, presented by Dude Wipes.